All right, in this video, what we're going to do is spend just a minute and talk about rebuilding curves and surfaces. Now, why would you ever want to rebuild a curve or a surface? Simple. If you need to change your parameterization, if you need to make something uniform, and let's say it was chord length, if you need to change the number of spans, there's several different reasons. But with NURBS modeling, you will find yourself doing this often. Now, let's go ahead and start out with a simple example. Let's come up here to create. Let's grab an EP curve tool and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'll go crazy. There we go. Let's hit Y to repeat this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. So we definitely have different number of spans with each of these. So let's go ahead and inspect our curves. First curve. Number of spans, 8. Second curve, number of spans, 6. What happens at this time if we were to loft these two curves together? Come up here to surfaces and loft. Take a look at this. Ready? Set. Here we go. 12 spans in U. 12. Count them. Wow. Basically, what ended up happening is Maya had to insert some additional isoparms to produce additional spans so that we matched the edit points of the two curves. This isn't really clean. No, this isn't clean at all, to be honest with you. So what we could have done was rebuilt our curves first and then did the loft, which would have resulted in a much better looking surface. So let's go ahead and undo a couple of times just to get rid of that. Now, let's take a look at this. We've got 8 spans, we've got 6 spans, and we were able to reproduce pretty much the exact same shape. So I bet we can get away with maybe even as low as 5. So I'm going to select both curves. We can rebuild both at the same time. Come up to Edit Curves from the Modeling menu set. From there, come down to Rebuild Curve and open up the Options box. Now, there's a lot of different options in here. Don't panic. And if you think this is bad, in a minute when we get into Rebuild Surfaces, it's going to get even worse. But it's really pretty simple. Right now, we're only going to focus on just a handful of these settings because, after all, this is not an intense modeling class. This is just an introduction to NURBS. So what do we have? How do we want to rebuild this? Well, I want to rebuild this as uniform. There's a bunch of different options that we have. We can reduce knots, we can match knots, get out multiple knots, curvature, etc. But we're just going to keep this as uniform. Nice and simple. The parameter range, the parametric value from min to max, what do we want this at? We could do a 0 to 1, and the result would end up being a min value of 0 and a max value of 1 after the rebuilding was done. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and put it on 0 to number of spans. So if we end up with 5 spans doing the trick, we're going to have min-max 0 to 5. All right, keep. We're not worried about any of this right here. This is going to become more important when we get into advanced modeling. Let's come down here to number of spans. Boy, oh boy, this is where it all centers. This is the most important part of the Rebuild Curve Options dialog. How do we want to rebuild this? How many spans do we want? Well, I'm thinking we can get away with 5. But this is just a testing thing, an experimental thing. You really need to try. If it doesn't work, undo, change your number, apply again, and continue working until you keep a shape that looks pretty similar to what you had to begin with. So let's try 5, and we'll talk about the degree in just a second. Apply, and look at that. For the most part, our shape stayed the same. Sure, it changed just a little bit, but you're always going to see that happen when you're rebuilding curves and surfaces. And if it ends up changing a little bit too much, and it's something that you can't tweak out by manipulating the location of CVs after doing the rebuild, then simply undo and then change the number of spans and rebuild again. Now, let's go ahead and close this for just a minute. Take a look at what we have. Top curve, 0 to 5, since we did 0 to number of spans. And, of course, we have 5 spans. The bottom one, again, 0 to 5 with 5 spans. Hey, 2 curves that look like they're going to play nicely together. All we need to do now is select the 2 curves and then come up here to Surfaces and Loft. Look at that. Let's take a look at our parameterization. We've got 0 to 5 and 0 to 1. 5 spans in U, 1 span in V. Whew. So much cleaner. And of course, from here, we could come in and tweak it out even further. You could even use construction history to come in here if you wanted to and tinker with it. Like, look at this. Straightening that guy up. Maybe this guy down here. About right there. Oh, yeah. That's looking really good. So a little bit of tinkering, and now we've really cleaned up our surface, and we have this fish-like looking shape. Okay, so now let's go ahead and select this guy, delete him out, and come back into the Rebuild Curves dialog one more time. So select two curves, edit curves, rebuild. Okay, the degree. We do have the ability to change the degree of the curve after the curve has been made, which is really cool. If I wanted to, I could take this 3-degree cubic curve, both of them, and change it to, let's say, linear. Maybe I wanted some sort of straight-edged looking fish or something. And right now, you'll notice that with the curve selected, looking over here in the attribute editor, our degree is, of course, 3. Let's go ahead and apply, and look at this. Straight edge. It's exactly what I was hoping to get. That's linear. Back up here to surfaces. Loft. Nice and clean. And of course, I can still come in there and grab, manipulate, and clean up. You get the idea. Okay? Now, of course, in reality, I really didn't want that to be so low res, so I'm going to go ahead and change my degree. Back over to cubic, apply, and get something nice and smooth. So, this is the Rebuild Curves dialog. You're going to use it. You're going to have to use it because as you're drawing out your curve network, you're going to end up with curves that aren't going to match another curve that it needs to work with in generating a surface. Rebuild the curves, make their numbers match. Another example, here's one, something we didn't do a second ago. This just kind of came to me. If I wanted to, I could come up here and say create. Let's grab the pencil tool like such, and then perhaps come over here and, I don't know, write something. Let's actually undo that. Let's write something out like a J. There we go. So we got a J. Now, with this J, what kind of detail are we looking at? So I'll go ahead and hit enter. We've got 14 spans. Do we need 14 spans? Well, we're going to need a lot because of some of the tight turns we're making. But let's see if we can get away with something like 10 spans. So apply. So very little change. As a matter of fact, I can tweak out the things that change that I don't like. Our spans are now 10. Let's try something even lower. Let's try 6 is going to be pushing it, but we'll try it. Apply. Look at that. Actually, that holds up quite nicely. And at this point, I can simply come in and make those changes that I was talking about a second ago. So come in here, maybe move this one out a little bit, and done. That actually ended up being easier than I thought it would be. There we go. And let's go ahead and right-click and select. And again, looking over in the attribute editor, only 6 spans involved for this curve right here. So rebuild curves options, you'll be in here often making adjustments and changes. The biggest things you're going to be focusing on this class is the number of spans and your parameter range. You can use 0 to 1 or 0 to number of spans depending on what you need, and you'll just become more familiar with this the more you work with NURBS. Now, let's go ahead and get rid of this guy. Let's come back over to our 2 fish curves, if you will. And with these, let's go ahead and come back in here, surfaces, loft, pull this guy up. Of course, we still have construction history in place as demonstrated here. Look at that, pink. Let's go back to shade it. Now what I want to do is show you how you can go about rebuilding a surface. Let's say that I've created this surface here, and now I want some more detail in the center running this way. So let's turn it like this so I can say running horizontally so that I can give a little bit of depth to this shape of a fish, if you will. It's a very sad-looking fish. To do this, we would obviously need to rebuild the surface, or we could insert isoparms, and we've taken a look at that. I mean, I can come in here, right-click, grab an isoparm, and just drag these out to where I need the extra detail, and place it like that. But I'm focusing on how to rebuild things, so we're not going to do that. Let's go ahead and select this again. Come up here to Edit NURBS with the surface selected. We'll come to Rebuild, come down to Rebuild Surfaces, open up our Options dialog, and inside here we have got a ton of properties, ton of attributes that you can change. So, rebuild type, uniform, we got match knots, trim, just a bunch of stuff. Again, we're not going to get into all of these details here. We're just uniform, simple enough. Parameter range, 0 to 1, keep what we currently have, 0 to number of spans, I'll do 0 to number of spans. Direction, this is very important. A minute ago, we didn't have a direction because a curve only runs one way, in the U direction. With a surface, we have both the U and a V direction. So what I need to do here is pick which one needs to get changed. So let's come over here to the attribute editor and take a look at this. I need to change V. V only has one span. I need some additional detail in here. So I'm going to change that. So coming over here, I'm going to say, let's go ahead and change the V direction. Come down to the number of spans that you'd like to rebuild the surface with. I would like it to have 3. So we'd have 1, 2, 3. That's going to give me 2 new isoparms in there. And then again, I can specify a degree for the U direction and a degree for the V direction, allowing me to even split this up as we talked about briefly earlier when I showed you guys the cylinder. Let's go ahead and put this back over on 3 cubic. That's all we want. Let's go ahead and apply. And we just rebuilt in the V only. And at this time, I can, of course, right-click, go into CVs, and grab and start pulling. So let's go ahead and do that for a few of these. And here we'll grab a couple, and maybe out here we'll grab a couple. And we can now start adding a little bit of depth. Maybe even go as far as to scale this out just a little bit, like such. And there you go. Rebuilding. It's very important. Trust me on that. Let's go ahead and switch back over, and there is our crazy-looking shape. But the most important thing to understand is what rebuilding does. Looking back over here, our number of spans, 5 in U. We now have 3 in V. This is what we were looking for. Span 1, span 2, span 3. So that's rebuilding curves and rebuilding surfaces. We will be using these from time to time throughout our project that's coming up here. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. So with that, thanks a lot, guys.